Okay, so like I said in the previous part of the video, I usually use like 3 main presets on the Kemper, so I try to like replicate those presets on the Quad Cortex and even try to improve them whenever I can. And as you may figure out, I have a bit of a complex setup, and it's not as complex as it sounds, just complex to do it in the Quad Cortex. So here's what I want. One amplifier, but I want to have multiple cabinets, or at least multiple cabinet IRs. Like in my Zilla 2x12 there, that you might be able to see like there you go. That Zilla 2x12 has a V30 speaker and a creamback, so I knew that when I was doing the Quad Cortex cab simulation part that I wanted to have that as well. And, you know, to make it more like close to what I'm having here, I decided to have like a full 2x12 with a V30 and I have a full 2x12 with a creamback. 2 independent outs. You guys might be thinking like, oh, that's dumb, why just not get a Zilla 2x12 creamback and V30 loaded? Yeah, we can do that, but through my experience of working with some other modelers, I think this way it gives you like a closer recreation of the sound you're usually looking for, at least with 2x12 cabinets. I haven't dealt too much with 4x12s, but with 2x12s, this is what I've found that works like the most efficient, at least for the tone that I'm looking for. And then another thing that I wanted to do is that I wanted to have 2 tape delays, and I wanted to have like one tape delay doing a quarter note, then having another delay doing a dotted eighth note. But I didn't just want to like have one out having one cabinet with one delay, then having the other cabinet on the other out with another delay. I wanted for the quarter note delay to go into one cabinet, and then for it to go into the eighth note delay and feed into it, like a parallel route, and then go into the other cabinet. So that was that. And at the same time, I also wanted to have all of those effects without the IR cabinet, so that I could go to a preamp, like the Seymour Duncan Power Stage little preamp, or here at home I can use the preamp of the Kemper to use that cabinet over there, the Zilla 2x12, or to use an amplifier or the effects loop of any amp that I go anywhere, and that's what I happen to have. And I wanted to have that in the same preset. Like I didn't want to have one preset for another thing, another preset on the other thing, because that way I can even have the Quad Cortex and like the Seymour Duncan Power Stage power amp thingy with a 2x12 on stage, have that and have like a stage monitor like with an actual cab going on, and then also have the 2 independent outs going to the front of house. So, with that going on, you know, it would seem pretty easy to do all of that splitting. You would do all of your effects before the amp, and then your amp, then all of your effects after the amp, and then after all of your effects after the amp, you then have a couple of splitters to go for the outs that you could use. Now the Quad Cortex doesn't allow me to do that the way that I want to do that, because for some reason you can do like a splitter or a mixer between rows 1 and 2 using one of the processors, then you can have a same splitter or mixer between rows 3 and 4 which are on the other processor, but you can have a splitter or a mixer in between processors. Maybe it's a hardware thing that Neural wasn't able to do, like having multiple processors, maybe it just doesn't work or can't work like that. But if it's a software problem that they need to work on, or if that's something that they just didn't program, which I find it hard to believe, but maybe it could be, that could be a thing that they could work on. So, in order to get everything that I wanted to do, here's how my signal path goes. The Quad Cortex has 2 independent effects loops. So I'm using one of the independent effects loops with just a patch cable going from like send to its own return, so that in the Quad Cortex, and you guys can probably see this with the image, I'm going through all the effects before the amp, then all the effects after the amp, until the quarter note delay. Then after the quarter note delay, it goes with a splitter, like an AP sort of thing, and on A, it just goes to one of the cabinet IRs, which then can go to the front of house. In this case, it's going through USB out to my computer. And then, from the other way out, it goes in to the eighth note delay that's been fed also with the quarter note delay, and then after that eighth note delay it's going to 2 outs at the same time. So it's going into one of the send and returns, which is going to come out of the Quad Cortex and then back into it just from a patch cable, not going to any other effect, to then back into the Quad Cortex being affected by the other IR that is then going to front of house as well. Then the other effect that is having all the effects but none of the IRs is going to the then power amp that I chose. So it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully with the image of the screen going on, it's quite understandable. Though one thing that I noticed, which I guess Neural could work on that, is that you should be able to select if your outs are affected by the volume knob or not. So for instance, like all the USB outs, they're not affected by the volume knob on your quad cortex. But the send and returns and the other ones are affected by your volume knob. So at first I had some struggles thinking like, oh, why is it going to one of the USB out and not the other one? That was happening because it was being affected by the volume knob. Neural should add an option so that like the multiple outs are in and that we can actually control them like that. So first thing is the guitar goes to the quad cortex with my wireless bypass, the WL20. There's a transmitter, the receiver isn't there. So this is, like I said, my main preset, which is like my crunchy plexi sound. And this is its raw sound. I was going for like AC/DC-ish vibes. It's quite dirty. But then, you know, if I pick lightly, and I turn my volume knob a little bit, or using another pickup combination. Maybe sometimes for rhythm it's not appropriate, depends on the context of the song, but I like to use a chorus. Like you saw on my pedal board, I have the C2, 11 o'clock maybe. It's around 40 to 45% of both rate and depth. And I like to use it like as a thickener sort of sound. So this is my preset without the chorus. And this is it with the chorus. So it just thickens it up, it gives them some extra girth. It's one of those effects that when you like plug it in, you maybe don't notice too much of a difference, but when you take it out, you do notice it. And even the mix is like very high, like maybe 80-85%. I did notice the version of a C2 that is on a quad cortex. The mix seems to be a little bit more prominent than it is on the actual pedal, but you know, nothing too much of a big deal. Now some of you might be asking, oh, why is the chorus before the amp and not after the amp? Isn't it going to get dirty and affect the drives, and the drives are going to accentuate the chorus effect and stuff like that? Yes, that is all true, but over the years I've noticed that I kind of preferred the sound of chorus before the amp. I don't know, maybe it's me liking the 80s sort of sounds, but you know, that's usually a thing. I do like the chorus before the amp for most of the things. Sometimes it can get a little bit like unapologetic and like too much in your face chorusy sound, which some songs, you know, it's just not appropriate. But for the sort of sounds that I like that it goes in the front. So I'll put it in the front unless someone tells me not to do that. And then I have an effect that I don't have turned on or a sine 20-foot switch, but I can, which is just a detuner, like in case there's a song that needs to be detuned. Like, oh, there's a song that is in A, and for some reason it's hard to play in another position, and so you need to like detune it a little bit. So here's it a tone down. So yeah, not much of a big deal, just is there if I need it. And then I have a 2-in-1 combo going on. I have the Tynal DPV4 by Dunlop going on out on the floor, just a tiny expression pedal to control my volume. I know I can connect it to other effects, but right now it's just doing volume. And then if I want to, I can just press button A and it turns off the volume and it goes for a wah-wah, just a crybaby with a little bit less of the high end going on. And then I have a couple of overdrives. I have a Klon, or at least the replica of the Klon that is in a quad cortex. I don't have it with too much gain. Let's see. The gain is at 4, treble at 8.5, and then level at 2.1. I have it more as like, I wouldn't say like a volume boost necessarily. It does a bit of volume boost, but it's more to like give you that juice, like the amplifier is working and it gives you a little bit more. almost like people do with a tube screamer, but I kind of prefer the lack of cut that the Klon does compared to the tube screamer. So this is just the amp. Now this is with the Klon. Like I mentioned, this is more of like an AC/DC sort of gain preset, but if you wanted to do some like heavier rock, but not really like 80s rock yet, like let's see, maybe Hold the Line by Toto. The tone sounds good to me, but it just doesn't have enough juice. But it's not enough juice for me to go to a lead sound. So I'll just add the Klon. So you know, it's just a thickener, a little bit of extra like of everything. Then after the Klon, so like the Klon will eventually feed up to this one. I have the Mudhoney that I profiled, my own T-Rex, like actual dinosaur logo T-Rex Mudhoney. And it was actually cool because usually on the Mudhoney I have to adjust it depending on the amp and stuff like that, or sometimes depending on the situation. And I could add some extra EQ to the Mudhoney after on the Quad Cortex. It made it sound like extra good to me. So this is just the Plexi, and this is the Plexi sound with the Mudhoney. I kind of like it because it's a mix between a fuzz and an overdrive. It can get a bit harsh sometimes, especially on the fiddly, middly, leady lines. But when you're playing live, sometimes it's that extra sharp high end that will cut you through, so I'm not too worried about that. And now since I have the Mudhoney on, the Klon can actually go into it and add some again, just pushing the Mudhoney more, which sometimes is a little bit too much gain, more gain than I would use in a tight metal sound or something like that. But it is cool. It is a cool sound that I struggled to do before. So it's just the Mudhoney. This is the Mudhoney with the Klon in front of it. Does that kind of sound like ultra gain that you can just and sound like you're doing more than you usually are. And then there's the Octavio sound that I profiled from the Kemper, which, for an Octavio sound, it's kind of hard to replicate. The Quad Cortex did really, really good. It even accentuated the octaves for some of the lower notes, which I appreciated. So yeah, regular Plexi sound, and here's the Octavio. Very spitty, which is cool. And even here, at the lower range, it was able to recreate that kind of envelope filtery sort of high octave sound. Which again, I don't have a proper Octavio pedal. It's just the version that was on the Kemper, which was actually very good. I had to tweak it a little bit, but after that it was fine. Then I just hooked it up to the Quad Cortex and it, not profiled it, it captured it. Cool. And of course, you put on your neck pickup and you go to the 10 to 12, 14th fret area. And you can see it's not quite fuzzy, it's kind of gaty and spitty, because that's how I like Octavio sounds too. If I want a more Jimi Hendrixy, more on fire sound, I just keep the Octavio and I put the Klon going into it. Or even if I'm feeling dashing and even a little bit sexy, I can use the Mudhoney going into the Octavio. A little bit crazy, more sounding like a proper fuzzed up Octavio sound. I'm pretty happy with how that sounds. Then the next effect that I have before the amp is like an envelope filter, auto wah sort of a sound. Like I mentioned before, I really like the Wah Rocker 3 by Gaiatone, which, you know, it's been very hard to replicate, I gotta tell you that. Haven't been able to like fully get it going, but I have a sound that like I'm okay with. It doesn't quite sound like the Wah Rocker 3, but like I said, it's close enough for rock and roll, as the kids like to say. And last but not leastly, before the amp, I have a Leslie effect, like a rotary speaker sort of a thing. Just a fast Leslie. I'm not really a user of the slower type. I really much like the faster one. It's just for like trying to mimic the keyboard player and kind of piss them off if we have a keyboard player. And that ends like the before the amplifier section of effects. Now since this is just like my hang out at home preset, have fun, not really have a specific song to play, and then have, just to have fun, you know, the freeze effect. So that if I want to jam over it, I can. So yeah, there's that just for the fun of it. This is the amp without the delays, just for the sake of it. I don't have too much reverb. Just a little bit of room. I think it's a room setup. Then here's the delays. This is just the quarter note, which you'll be hearing in both sides. And here it is with the eighth note added to it, which is then going to be fed by the quarter note delay as well. So on one of the sides, which I think is the left side, you're going to get both the quarter note delay and then that fed into the eighth note delay while it won't come out on the other one. I think you get what I mean. So yeah, that's pretty much how that preset goes. Nothing too fancy, a little bit maybe, but nothing too fancy. That's the preset I use most of the times, and I guess we can skip right ahead to like the lead sound, which is very similar to the crunch sound, just without as many like effects blocks added to it. It's more simple, it's still the same cabinets, just a slight tweak on the IR so that they sound closer to the cabinet I have at home. But yeah, in this one, I don't have a capture of one of my amps. I have a capture made by Neural DSP of a Bogner Uberschall. Not too much gain. Here's how just the amp sounds. I don't use it like this, but here's how the amp sounds. I usually use it with a boost. I usually use a tube screamer, but I tried it with this amp and I wasn't enjoying it as much as I was with a Klon as a boost. So I'm using the Klon like you would a tube screamer. So no gain. The level is at 5.5, so it's like at 1 o'clock maybe. midday 30, something like that. Then the tone is at 6, so at like, what, 1 o'clock as well. So, you know, they're pretty noon. And this is how the Bogner Uberschall sound. This is how the... This is how the Bogner This is how the Bogner Uberschall sounds with a boost in front of it. Yes. Now this is the preset that I would use for more metal stuff, like if you wanted to do any like, I don't know, thrash metal. In front of it, I have, in case I am feeling inspired, I have like an octave sound that is cool to do, like we're doing some sort of covers, and there's like a big synth sound. Or maybe some Muse sort of stuff. And I also have, in case I need to, which is, since this is more of a metal pre-sound, this is more where it gets used, like a detuner. Let's see, what can we do? I have the same delay setup and reverb setup going on. And yeah, I don't even have anything like after the delays or anything. I can still do the freeze thing if I want to, or the looper, and I can add more effects if I want to. Okay, lastly, but not leastly, we have the clean sound, which, like I said, it's quite of a disgusting clean sound because it's highly compressed. There's not like too much character of the amp because it kind of sounds like DI-ish because of all the compression. But it's a Vox CC30, and this is how the Vox sounds without the compressor, which I wouldn't really use. And here it is with the compressor. So it's set up so that I can like hit it super hard, doesn't go super loud, and then I can also like hit it quietly and it goes loud. Not too much going into it. What else do I have after that? I also have a detuner in case I need to, but I don't usually need to. I also have the wah-wah going on in case I need to do some like extra funky stuff, like... Then yeah, I have a little boost. I still want to retain like the clean properties of the sound, so I think it's kind of like an EP boost, blues breakery sort of a thing. Clean sound without the boost. And this is with the boost. Then what do I have? I have still the C2 chorus preset binaural, but I have it on the C1 mode, which makes it more square and more ugly and even more noticeable. But in this case, I don't use it turned on all the time. It's actually more of an effect, like a clean intro sort of effect. And then then again, you have the auto wah on the clean sound. And yeah, those are my presets. Complicated for some, not complicated enough for others. I wouldn't call myself the king of tone. Well, there is already king of tone, even if it's a pedal. I wouldn't call myself there's a prince of tone and there's a duke of tone. I wouldn't call myself the mayor of tone. There's probably a mayor of tone out there, goddammit, but still. I wouldn't call myself the mayor of tone, but, you know, I would say I'm very content with my tone. I like it. It's the sort of sound that I look for. And even when I compare it back to the profiles that I had on the Kemper, I kind of prefer the neural Cortex ones after all the EQing I did. All the presets that I've made, the crunchy one, the clean one, and the metal leady one, will be available on the Quad Cortex app website community thingy. You'll be able to download it, and you'll also be able to download like the individual presets that I made of the Plexi sound and of the Spitty Octavia one. And I didn't show you here, but I also did the green carrot pedals pumpkin pie dual big muff sounds. There's one side, the red one, that's quite thick, and then there's a green side that's quite harsh. And I was able to replicate both of them, and they sound really, really good, like really, really good. So yeah, there are those. I'll do that as well, and you'll be able to find all of those in the description below in the Quad Cortex community if you have a Quad Cortex of yourself. Alrighty then, so if you've stayed this far, I want to thank you guys so very much for watching. I think I probably mentioned it before. Any of these presets or neural captures that I've done will be available through the Neural Cloud situation. Just go check out from my account. I'll leave it in the description if I can. For those who follow the channel, I did quite a big hiatus, and I was going to come back, but then I didn't, and I was going to come back again, and then I didn't. But hopefully this time I really am coming back. I also want to start posting more on Instagram, so go follow me on there. Again, all the links are in the description below. If you are not yet subscribed, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the little bell for all the notifications, and leave a comment for all sorts of video ideas that you might have, or stuff that you want me to either do with a Quad Cortex, or lesson videos, tips, all sorts of things you guys would want me to do. Just leave them in the comment section below. And if there was any part of the video that I kind of rushed or didn't explain quite well, just leave it in the comments, and I'll either address it in another video, or I'll respond to the comment just there and then, and we'll figure it out. And yeah, I don't think I have anything more to get on with. Thank you so very much for watching and staying until the end if you did, and I hope this video didn't turn out too long, not only for you, but also for me in the editing process, but I guess it's something for future me to figure out. And yeah, I hope to see you the next time. Cheers!